Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement and lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
John, welcome to Lawyers Who Learn. Super excited to get to know you more and to dive into all the ways you've learned and grown as an attorney. So thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, David. Excited to be here.
Yep. So first off, as I said to you when we're connected, we've been a longtime Zendesk customer. You are currently, let's see, the associate GC on product and privacy at Zendesk.
Yep.
And on LinkedIn, you've been there since 2019 in many different roles, and we'll dive into that in a little bit. But what I thought I would do is I do you a favor. I would just go through your bio real quick to save you the trouble. So you started your career as a law career, I should say, 2013, Quinn Emanuel. You were there for 3 years. Then you went, looks like, into the legal tech space to Practice Fusion for a couple of years. And then 2019 is when you started at Zendesk. And most recently, 2024, and I'm going to actually read this out. You became a adjunct professor at, what is it, University of
UC Law, San Francisco,
UC
they call
Law.
it now, formerly UC Hastings.
Okay. Got it. And I'm going to just read out what's on your LinkedIn profile because I think it's super cool. Pitch, create, and teach upper-level law school course, Product Counseling, actionable legal advice for tech companies. This course is designed from my work experience in product development teams. Because there's no casebook on this topic, I created the syllabus and lesson plans for each of the 13 classes through my own research and knowledge. The goal of this course is to familiarize law students with the work inside a tech company and train them in adapting and adjusting the typical presentation of legal advice to be effective and useful for non-learners inside companies. Damn, that sounds like a cool course. So we're going to dive deep into that. And lastly, I'll say you are clearly very smart. Graduated magna cum laude from Georgetown Law in 2013. How'd I do?
That's perfect. It's all true, except Practice Fusion is health tech, not legal tech, but
cool.
all good.
Who would have thought? But before we go into your career and all that you've done, I'm going to ask you this question to start to give you a little bit of control. Is there any, because you've spoken a lot, you've done a lot in the profession, and I'm sure you speak to a lot of people at mentorship. Is there any question that you wish people would ask you more about how you've learned and grown in your career that, throw everything aside I want to talk about today, or we can talk about after, but you would love to this is the one thing I want to talk about first and go through there?
I don't know if it's a question exactly, but I think one of the biggest realizations I've had in my career, and that's what was hinted at in that law school course description you just read out, is thinking about what you need to be a business colleague to somebody who's not a lawyer. And I don't find a lot of lawyers and law students asking me that question, which makes sense. But that is where I have the most to say, I would say. So yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, finish the sentence.
I was just going to say, it's not where do you find the cases that you read. It's not which Supreme Court opinions do you follow. How do you build your skills with brief writing? It is how do you interact with clients? Particularly my expertise is being an in-house technology company lawyer. So for me, it's how do you talk to engineers? How do you talk to product managers? That's where I've done kind of the most thinking and learning in my career. And I think that's the most beneficial area for me in my career.
And the thing that I jumped to is you talk to them like a human, right? You don't talk to them like a lawyer, and you don't say you can't, nothing, you don't be at the roadblock to prevent anything from happening. And again, that's just my first impression of that answer. But like, where am I off? Tell me some of your thoughts on where you've been, like, what have you've done differently, you think, or where to be successful there?
Yeah, I think you are right. I think when you say, don't just say no, don't be the Department of No, that is a phrase we have heard. That's the thing we've been told not to be and not to do in our professions. So that's not super new. But I think when the first thing you asked was be a human, I think that is actually maybe not something that people talk about all that much. And for me, I guess it's this realization I had of if somebody asks you a legal question, the answer they want is if they answer you, if they ask you a question like, "Hey, I'm trying to build this feature. Is that okay?" The ideal answer from their perspective and for the business is yes. And
Of
then
course.
that's the end of the conversation. But I think like we optimize as lawyers for like, imagine how long you could give an answer to that question. If that is ultimately yes or no or whatever, but trying to keep it simple.
Let's talk about Zen. Let's bring it into Zendesk for that conversation. Honestly, how long when you joined Zendesk, tell us that story to go from you were in, I guess you were said in health tech. What was that story? How well known was Zendesk in 2019? I think pretty well known still because I was just right before COVID. But I would love to hear how you ended up there and how that, what you just, well, let's start with how you ended up there and then we'll tailor it into how you tie in what you just said, how to talk to non-attorneys in your firm.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts of how I landed there are when I was at Quinn as a at a law firm, Zendesk was one of the companies that I represented in a litigation. And so I got to know one of the attorneys there a little bit, just barely. And then they had a job opening, and I was looking to leave my role at my prior job for some pretty interesting reasons and applied, and it worked out. I was excited to get into a tech company. A lot of my career, and I think a lot of lawyers work in like advertising tech or health tech or fintech, highly regulated areas tend to have more lawyers in them. So Zendesk drew me by being a tech company first and foremost. And then the second kind of funny thing is Zendesk is customer support software, which is not that exciting. As if you are looking for the most exciting job in the world, maybe you go work for the NBA. I actually interviewed with them at the same time, which was fun. Didn't get it, but that would have been interesting. You work in, I don't know, you work at Meta. That seems interesting. There's always crazy legal things happening going on with them. And customer support software, generally speaking, is not the area that is like the most gnarly, crazy legal things happening all the time. But that actually happens to be what I was looking for at the time, which was let's take a deep breath. Last job was a little wild on all of those axes. And I liked Zendesk because they make customer support software, which felt boring. They made it like fun. They had cool branding. They had a cool name. People were excited to be there. The creative, the marketing videos were fun. Customers love the software. Generally, hopefully you're included in that. I know you've worked with it
We,
for a long time.
yeah.
So that excited me to go work
Look, with
there.
anything, I'm sure I don't know what the specifics are because I know I was saying there's a love hate to some degree, but just with any software you have with a long time, that's how it is. What I think is so sexy about Zendesk is it's very hard to leave once you're in it. And that's the good business to have. How big is the company today?
We're like 5,800 people globally, I think.
58. And do they share it's not, is it private still?
So we were public in 2019 when I joined
Oh, I didn't
Zendesk.
realize
I
that.
think we
Okay.
had gone public in 20.
So how big a market cap is it?
We're not public anymore. That's what's crazy.
Oh, that's why you're
So
confused. Okay.
yeah, we were public then. Mid-COVID, a little later in COVID, we went through this crazy journey of a bit of a proxy fight and then take private. We wound up being taken private again, so off the public market. So now we're PE owned.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
So
so that's
how,
been interesting.
yeah, it must be. So let's go back to the first thing you said about how to interact with teams and things like that. Can you take us through what that's been like at Zendesk and what are some things that you've learned that maybe foreshadow to your course that sort of helped you tie that into your course? Again, this is geared towards lawyers who learn, whether you're in law school, you want to be a corporate counsel somewhere, or you're at Quinn Emanuel right now and you're thinking about it, or you're thinking about your clients. I think there's a lot to get from some of your insights here.
Yeah, if I can start even with the prior job, I'll throw some of that in there too, because I think it informed a lot of my philosophy and like how I approach this stuff. But at the prior role, it was a startup, 200 people or so. And I came in as a product counsel, but also doing some sort of litigation stuff. And one of the things that I think was really key for me was one of the program managers we took a liking to each other. She became a really good friend to me. And at one point, and she really guided me through here's what an engineering team is. These are the product designers. These are the marketers. These are the product managers. These are the program managers. These are the UI engineers. These are the services backend engineers. I just didn't really know a lot of that stuff. This is the site reliability engineering. She actually moved my desk. We used to sit with the legal department. All the lawyers were together upstairs and the engineers were downstairs. I moved my desk to be sitting next to the engineers downstairs for part of the week, thanks to her. And I just started realizing that the problems these people are solving, first of all, they're very important to the company. Engineers are core to a tech company. No offense, lawyers, but we are not the ones that are like building the thing that actually makes the company work. And they just, they have plans, they want to build things, they want to do things, but the legal advice they'd gotten, or when they didn't have somebody to help them with this stuff, it wouldn't, they're not asking questions in terms of what does the Ninth Circuit case law say? What does the Supreme Court think of this? What are the trends in employment litigation? They're saying, I want to build this thing, like it was health tech again, so let's talk about electronic prescribing. We want to rebuild our electronic prescribing workflow so that it's easier for people to use. Okay. For me, as a lawyer, that means I need to go look at what laws govern electronic prescribing. There's a bunch of laws specific to certified electronic health record technology that were applicable to us. So I need to understand how those work and what they do. But I ultimately, these people don't want an answer in those terms. They don't want me to say section 55 of the EHR rules say this. They want me to say, like, when you change the button that like submits to, when you change the signature that the doctor electronically signs the prescription, you should look out to make sure that it meets this requirement, or don't change that thing in this way. And getting to be able to give them those simple answers, it takes a lot of work. You have to be the excellent lawyer who can read those regulations.
It's interesting because when I hear, first of all, I love the physical desk moving to the dev team. And because not only are you there, but you're actually showing them you care and you want to learn and you're part of their team. You're not you're not that's the room of no. Secondly, you got to ask a lot of questions to better understand what the product is that they're building, and you're rolling up your sleeves. And third, yeah, then you got to do the work and get the answers. And as there's no, sometimes most of the times there's not a clear black and white answer. That's always somewhere in the gray. Not always, but many times. Is that a fair statement or what?
Of course.
Yeah. Especially when you're trying something different or new, like, there's no case law on it yet, but, or something to that degree. Just as you were saying that, the first question I had came to my mind was like, how, if at all, has AI changed that component? And for this moment, I'm focused on AI in your role as an attorney to help you find the right answer. And then we can talk about the privacy issues with integrating into the tool. But this is more about how have you used AI in your current role, if at all, to help get these answers?
Great question. I think one really interesting thing about AI is if you ask it a question, I guess I'm speaking of the prototypical chat interface, large language model. If you ask it a question, it's generally going to answer your question, which is pretty awesome. Like when you used to Google stuff, or when you would ask a person a question, like as we were just discussing, the lawyer might not answer the question that was asked of them. They'll say some gray area case law. But if you say to AI, should I have the doctor sign here or here? It will say there or there. I don't know if it's right or not, but it's actually cool and I love that about it, because when I'm searching, and I use it all the time, we at Zendesk have a great internal portal to be able to access ChatGPT. We also have a bunch of other AI tools, and AI is super relevant to our business right now, which is interesting. We could talk about that too. But it's like a great example of somebody who actually can listen. It listens exceptionally well to what's being asked of it, and it answers the questions that are asked of it in the way that is requested by the asker. That's not always perfect, and it's not always going to work out, but I think it's a great example because it can show you, I don't know, that's how I use it a lot. Like when you search Google, you get the ads, you get some websites that might be relevant, but you don't like, remember Ask Jeeves? So yeah, I wanted to ask Jeeves,
Yeah.
how far is Canada from Mexico? And it would maybe pull up a blog where somebody wrote about their trip from Canada to Mexico, and you could find the answer in there, but it will actually answer it. But anyways,
To your point, and I know Google's innovating in other ways, but I can't tell you the last time I've actually searched something on Google versus ChatGPT because of that specific thing. But what are the actual tools you're using? It sounds like you're using ChatGPT. Are you using any other tools to help find answers to these questions about privacy? And I'm sure that's just a starting point.
yeah,
Like, have
I
you
do use
subscribed to?
ChatGPT. I think on ChatGPT, we have a bunch. On ChatGPT, I think I would use it particularly on an area where I'm not that knowledgeable. So let's say I know GDPR really well. Maybe I'll try asking it a nuanced GDPR question and maybe it'll give me a decent answer. But like for me, it's, oh, a misleading marketing question has come up, question from the marketing department. It's not even really my job to do those questions, but I'd love to help this person out. And I don't remember from my old days of doing that how California treats this as opposed to Tennessee or whatever. So I'll
Yeah.
ask ChatGPT that. I might ask it for some links, click on the links, kind of be like, okay, it seems basically right. Kind of a low stakes question where it's not the core thing to my duty, but it'll help me go way faster and be able to help more people quickly. So I'll use ChatGPT in that way. I've experimented with Gemini deep research in terms of, hey, like, how about you go out and benchmark? There's a bunch of competitors we have in the industry. Here's 10 of their names. Go look at how their public customer agreements address this issue. Or or even better yet, rather than reading a single document, read all of their marketing materials. What is their basic approach to AI legal compliance? How do these 10 competitors do it? How does Zendesk do it? And I read how they think Zendesk does it. I'm like, okay, that's actually pretty accurate. Click into the links. I think that those research tools, the deep research tools can be really useful for research. I think ChatGPT for a whole bunch of things, but then also, yeah, Zendesk offers AI solutions. So we use Zendesk. Our legal team uses Zendesk to answer customer questions. We have a bunch of cool new features. If there's a long ticket, we can get an LLM to summarize the ticket for us. It can propose answers to common customer support questions that come in. It can either say to me, hey, John, why don't you answer with this answer? This is kind of what you said in the recent tickets. And I can say, okay, yeah, that looks right. Go ahead and send it. Or I want to change that a little bit. Let me change that. And then bots we're exploring with too, in terms of getting more and more autonomous about answering questions from our product managers and our engineers. If they want to come to us and say, hey, I want to change the price for this thing. How do we deal with that? I've written an article on that internally and maybe they didn't read it, but a bot would actually answer their question, do the kind of RAG search, reference my articles and answer common questions for them there. So that's a few of the things we do. I'm sure there's others.
Yeah, no, my mind goes crazy because one of the things, the biggest challenge is not all the tools that you've implemented, it's getting the team to actually use them and change their behavior to use them. One internal, how many attorneys do you guys have at Zendesk? Ballpark?
Something like 40.
40. Okay.
Maybe it's more like 30 actually, but yeah,
Okay.
legal department's a little more than, but non-lawyers.
Yeah, just for so one from an attorney standpoint, but even from I think about from our team, I don't know how many things we have a whole customer service team that's using, and they have tickets and they do things like that, but I don't know if they've actually even adopted to any of these AI tools yet. And we have built AI tools in Lawline as well. So there's both of those components because there's this overwhelmingness, but that is not the purpose of this episode. So
Yeah.
we'll box that right there. Okay. So let's step away from Zendesk for a moment. Just an aside, you started at Quinn Emanuel. Was there an aha moment for you where you're like, I don't think I'm gonna move away from firm life to corporate counsel or to private companies?
Yeah. There are a couple different points. I was really lucky to have a wonderful mentor and partner that I worked with there for a long time, who really taught me about what it means to be a good lawyer. She wound up retiring. So at that point, it's kind of like, okay, let's test the waters with what else I can do here. And I think for me, what I realized is I didn't want to continue honing a skill that I didn't think I wanted to be the best at for the rest of my career. I didn't want to be a partner at a law firm for a few different reasons. My wife is a marketer. She had been at or she did comms and marketing, and she was at a communications firm, and then she went in-house before I did, and she was encouraging me like, here's what it means to be the client or be in-house, and it sounded attractive to me. She also was encouraging me just because the law firm hours and lifestyle are not super fun to be married to. It was a recognition that I had learned a ton, and there was a bunch more to learn, but I felt like I had learned, let's call it 80% of what was going to be really valuable to me. And to get that next 20% was going to take decades. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure I wanted to be the 100% expert in that type of thing.
And it's an interesting point because it's once you make the decision, I don't want to go for partner, then you have to make a decision. Then why am I here? Maybe. I don't know. Is that sort of what you're saying? Like if you don't want to go for broke and get the big money, you are gonna, I don't know what, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are at large firms who decide they don't want to go partner, but are still there for 20 years and they work different hours. I don't know. I don't have that
I
experience.
would say that's part of it for me. The other part for me is my dad was an engineer, had his own software startup. When I had the exposure to the clients and the technology companies, I was always like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And I never didn't have that same feeling at being at a law firm. It's not really cool to me for just because of my personal upbringing and predilections. But I've always been a little interested in entrepreneurship, startups, taking risks, doing your own thing. I still haven't pulled it off. I'm still in a pretty traditional career, but like teaching this law school class was my attempt at that. But even you, not even you, but I think you're a great example. Like I read about what you've done, about the materials you put out on entrepreneurship and also learning. And I don't know, I think it's really cool. You asked some of the questions you were talking about, considering talking about are like, what's the biggest risk you've taken in your career? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I haven't taken that big of a risk. I guess in retrospect, going to a startup from a big law could be described as a risk. And maybe it felt that way at the time, but in retrospect, I'm like, oh, that was a great move.
Yeah. It's funny because I have the list of questions. I generally try not to go to them unless needed because I just rather have a conversation and see where it goes. But maybe I should reflect on them more because yeah, it is good to ask pointed questions, which I have a couple for you. But with that said, I think first of all, I can obviously relate to you fully because I'm an attorney in a legal tech business, love developers because that's the coolest thing to build and create. And I love marketing and product and building a product that's awesome. So that's the dream to that degree. And even I'm like, oh, what risk have I really taken? Or at least at this stage in my career, because there's always risks, but then you're always like, to some degree, even though you know you're not supposed to, you're like, you look at those people over there. Those
Yeah,
people
yeah, yeah.
took a risk.
Serious
I,
risks.
I
Yeah.
I took like a jump. I took 2 feet, a foot, and it's something that's still in my mind on, okay, what is the next risk I want to take that will help me fulfill my purpose and live to my potential. And that's what I somewhat hear you saying when I say risk is like, how do I not be bored? I'm 47. When I was like, go ahead. I see you're about to say something, but
I just think it's really interesting what you just said. Your career didn't feel risky to you, but when I look at him, you are the person to me. I'm like, holy shit, he took big risks. But maybe, and then it ties back to what I was saying about the businesses. Like businesses should take risks that are exactly tuned to their business goals. And just like us personally, our leaps to some people might seem insane, but if this is what we love and this is our career and our journey in our area, it's not really a risk. It's just, or if it is, it's perfectly aligned to what we want to do. So yeah, of course, we're going to take risks to start a education learning company like you did. I don't
it
know.
was it's just we grew organically, so it's a frog boiling in water. Like
All of a sudden you
you
were,
look back and you're like, holy smokes, look what we've done in the past 20 years. Wow. But we did it one brick at a time, which is what I like and it's so rewarding. And to some degree in my personal life, again, I wouldn't call it a risk. I think looking backwards, it's hard to call yourself a risk when you're like, oh, that wasn't so hard. Oh, that wasn't as hard as I thought. And you forget
Yeah.
looking forward, the fear. We moved 2019. I moved with my family for 2 years to Barcelona
Wow.
and I have 3 kids because if I had to break it down to it, I was going through a midlife rut that I was like, what am I doing every day? And let me figure this out and let me explore the world and be remote before remote was cool. And so, yeah, I think there's things like that. But this is what this is about. This is about helping both of us and everyone who's listening explore if it's about risk. And by the way, I highly recommend you watch, and I'll send it to you. And anybody who's listening to this, the first episode I did was actually interviewing my father because he is somebody who's taken a lot of risks in his career. And so I think potentially, and he's in real estate and in business and different areas, there's probably a subconscious thing that's he's taken bigger risks than me and he started with zero, but it's also very inspiring and put it out there. So that's my attempt to get vulnerable.
I'll check that out.
I'll send that to you. And then this, I'm not plugging, but just as here, this is a book that I wrote in 2019 called The Fast Forward Mindset. And what's so good about it for this conversation is it's a framework, but in each part of the section, I tell a story where we messed up or where I had a struggle in growing Lawline in the first 10 years. And
I'd love to check that out.
This book, just because I have books in front of me, and then I'm going to ask you about your books, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living.
Oh yeah, love a good Dale Carnegie.
So Dale Carnegie's most famous for How to Win Friends and Influence People. But this book was transformative in my life because just in the first couple of pages, they give you formulas to help you reduce worry and make decisions, reduce worry by 50% overnight. And so I think when we talk about risks, it's remembering like good thing, bad thing, who knows, like you have to be okay with making decisions to take those risks and moving forward. Because I've shared 2 books, let me ask you, and you can feel free to look at your phone or your Kindle or your Audible. What are books? Is there any books that you're currently reading that you want to share? And if not, what are some books that have been impactful for you in your career?
I love reading. My mom was a librarian. I read a lot of fantasy fiction novels.
Awesome.
My books are up here. You can't see them on the camera. I wonder if there's a good one to grab for right now. In the interest of plugging, this is fun because somebody I worked with on this. So this woman, Adrienne Go and Olga Mack, these are 2 kind of legal influencers who wrote this book about product counseling. When I was teaching my class, I taught it.
What does it say? Can you just read it out loud?
Product counsel, advise, innovate, and inspire.
Fantastic.
So when I was teaching my class, as you mentioned in the read up earlier, there was no textbook on product counseling, but these women wound up writing one. Like I was talking to them during the process and participated a little bit, but I think it's a really fun thing. She just posted on LinkedIn about it, where part of what they produced was a syllabus for somebody if they want to teach their own class. Here's a syllabus to kickstart you into doing that.
Wow.
And maybe that's a plug I'll give is law schools are dying for people who have interesting experience, particularly in-house working in technology, to teach these classes. And so it's a pretty fun experience. I would recommend it. And if you're listening and you're interested, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to talk about it.
I am interested. So
Okay, great.
I went to New York Law School. One of my actually, you might appreciate this interview too. One of the former interviews I did was in regards to an institute that they have that's focused on preparing law students to be in-house GCs. And they have a whole institute designed by that. And it's Michael Pastor is the one who does that. It's a really great institute, but they also are trying to build. I just came from a conference, a professional development conference for lawyers, and a lot of law schools were there. And one of the classes that are becoming more popular is leadership in law. And so I'm trying to figure out and design, like, because I'm inspired by you, and this is a good segue to what you've taught, is I'm not a practicing attorney. I am an attorney and I have my credits and I have my license, but I'm a practicing entrepreneur and I'm big in leadership and I'm very involved in talking to lawyers. How can I add value as an adjunct professor, let's say New York Law School, where maybe it's a leadership course, maybe it's something else. Do you see room for somebody like me Or do you think you have to be more practicing in the day-to-day to actually add more value to these students?
Yeah, I would say I couldn't understate how much value you could add. I think like you're dripping with value to be provided to students literally no matter the course. If you just sit there and tell them about your experiences and talk to them and have conversations about what you've done, what you care about, and talk with them back and forth about it. Like that was what amazed me so much in my classes. They're really, when people go to law school, they're like, oh, you could use a law degree to do anything. That's the thing people say. And you've done that. And people want to see that. They want to know exactly your journey because they're all on their journey too. Like the students are in a tough spot. They don't have jobs yet. They're like, oh, what am I going to do? What's my career going to look like? And as that feeling crops up at different points throughout one's career, anyways, I think they would really love that. In terms of what the format of the course is, I don't know. I think you're right that you wouldn't teach evidence law or trial practice or something, probably. But again, that's not what the students really are looking to sign up for. They already have that. What they would love to take a course from an adjunct on is like podcasting. That's too specific, but
Yeah.
legal tech, or even more like starting a business yourself in law, or I don't know. I just know I can think of the students from my class, and that was what they seemed to enjoy most was like just talking to me about the day to day, what's going on, what are the challenges I've dealt with.
One of the things that, so thank you for that. I'm going to ask you a follow-up, but one of the things that really stood out to me, like when they were talking about leadership in law, this guy who was presenting the class that they had at his law school, I think it was Illinois. I'll ask you this statistic. Out of 47 presidents, how many of them do you think had a law degree?
It's a lot, I think. I don't know, 30? Is that maybe that's too many?
Yeah, 24,
Okay.
which is about half, more than half. To your point, like having a law degree is a stepping stone to many areas in life in addition to law, that being an example right there. And then he just builds that up. So let's talk about this because I think it's good to use me as an example so others can learn. Let's start with how did you pitch the law school? Did they come to you? Let's start with that. So somebody else is listening in addition to me and they want to teach. Well, and so what should they, how did you do it? And so we can go through that.
Yeah, I can tell you how I did it and how other people sometimes do it and stuff. I was sitting there. As you've noticed, I like talking and I have ideas about the legal profession. So I was like, I feel like I have some stuff I want to share with students, maybe. And I've really loved my career in product counseling specifically. Like I've gone through this evolution and gotten to a place where I feel really happy with the work I do. And so I just looked around online for a while. I was like, are there adjunct positions available? I was like, maybe I'll just do legal research and writing. I also have always been curious. My dad was a professor at one point before he started his business. And I was like, oh, I wonder what does it feel like to teach? So I sent some applications online, heard absolutely nothing from any of them for a while. I I was in touch with a professor, a former professor of mine at UC Law, who I had gone to Georgetown, but she moved from Georgetown to UC Law a few years back. And I emailed her and I was like, hey, could you help me? I wrote up this one-page pitch for a class. I have other ideas too. I could teach legal research and writing. Do you want to help me edit this? Do you think I'm missing anything here? And she's, why don't you just apply here and try that? And I was like, oh, okay. And I got passed off to the dean of students there, and they were like, we are trying to build out the connection between students and the tech industry and adjunct professors who would want to talk about practice and what the real world is like, technology. And so like you or I are a hot commodity to these law schools right now. This is what they want.
Yeah.
They don't want more evidence law teachers right now. They want people with practical experience who can give these unique courses. So then I worked with them and I was like, I guess I'm just gonna write that. I wrote up a pitch and they're like, yeah, it sounds good. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'll write the rest of the class. And they worked with me on that 13 weeks. You choose the credit length, 1, 2, 3 credits. Did you ever something?
Say again?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were starting to say something.
No, I'm
Okay.
actively listening.
Yeah, I brought in a lot of,
So you see, you choose the credits. You, as the faculty member, would choose how many credits you want it to be. So
yeah,
13 weeks is how many credits?
13, everything is 13 weeks, but it's 1 hour per week for 1 credit, 2 hours per week for 2 credits, 3 hours per week for
What
three
did you
credits.
choose?
Just one. I was like, I'm busy at
Sounds
work.
smart.
I know, right? And they were all like, oh, 2 hours is easy. Two credits is nothing. I'm like, "Oh, that's 2 hours per week. That's a lot. I
It's
also
not like you're getting paid that much. So
knew.
it's a labor of love. So how do you design a 13-week syllabus? And did you use ChatGPT to help you?
Yeah, I did. I forget. I have the original structure of what do I have to say? One thing I wanted to say, what do I want to teach the students? What do I want the students to learn? Item one was like literally what is a technology company? Set aside the law entirely, set aside being a lawyer. What are these companies? We were in the Silicon Valley at the time, and there's this statistic like per capita square footage, Silicon Valley and like Kuwait or Qatar produce the same amount of dollars. It's like literally as though there's oil in the ground just spurting money into the air in both of these locations. Literally true in Qatar, but in the Silicon Valley, it's like startups and software companies have grown so well there. What is happening? Why is this happening? Who are the people? What do
I
they
love
think
that.
about?
Was that one class right there?
Yeah, that was the first class.
And what was that book that you shared? I assume that was not around when you started the class. That was upcoming.
Correct. Yeah, they finalized this midway through the semester and
So
now it's
was there a
available.
book?
No, so that was the other hard part for me was I'm like, okay, I'm gonna find some articles online. I'm gonna what is helpful is there's other professors who teach internet law or teach IP law and have their course books free online open source. So I would take a little bit from here, a little bit from there. There's some influencer professors out there like Eric Goldman at Santa Clara, or who's the other guy I'm thinking of? I don't know. There's a guy at Cornell, Brimmelman, who have these
So,
textbooks.
so just before you did day one, you had to come up with the 13 classes, right?
Yeah,
With maybe ChatGPT helped, you put that there. Obviously, it can be flexible. You submit that 13 class syllabus each day to the dean. How long was the approval process?
he's I want to see it. He looked at it and then he's like, it looks pretty good. You might want to think about this and that. Some of there it's really free. Like I was surprised where they're just like, I can just go in and say what I want to say. And it was pretty
And
much
how many students was it for?
15.
And 15. Okay, that's pretty small. Was that your decision, or how did that,
When they
is that
have
how
a
they start
first
with you?
time professor teach a class, they're like no more than 20 students can enroll in the class. They put the class out there, the students sign up for what they want to sign up for, and 15 signed up for mine.
Got it. Would you have rathered it more, or you like the 15?
It was perfect.
Okay. And because it's like a syllabus and you did 13 weeks in advance, I'm sure each week you're like, what was on the syllabus for next week? And then you're like, okay, let me do some work and research and prepare versus getting it all done in the first day. Is that fair?
Totally. That was a really fun, challenging learning experience for me. Speaking of no big risks, I remember being nervous as heck about this back before, because in my job, I'm like, if I'm going to go make a appellate argument in court, or if I'm going to give a big presentation at work, I'm going to practice it. I'm going to make the slides perfect. I'm going to have everything all set. But here I have to do this every single week for a full hour for 13 weeks. I don't have time. I just don't have time to make it perfect. So it became I'm going to just talk to the students about these topics. We're going to have a back and forth, a dialogue. I'm going to prepare a few slides, say some stuff, but really I want to have a conversation with them, which A, it made it easier for me to do, but B, I think it made it better for them too, because it was interactive and they were way more involved in the class. It wasn't just a lecture.
But and again, to their point, an hour goes by really quickly, like when you're there. And I can see why 2 hours is tempting because you could just take a half hour to get warmed up and people are talking. And do you feel that way now that you're in it, or is it still the perfect time?
If I did it again, I'd be happy to do it with 1 hour. I don't, if I did it with 2 hours, that would be fun. What I would do is I would probably take the second hour every time and dedicate it fully to an experiential kind of like,
Love
now
it.
you guys are the product council, she's the engineer, he's the designer. Go do this exercise.
Got it. Got it. And so you've taught the class once so far. And what is the final assignment? What is the grading
Yeah.
component to it?
So that is where the dean and company helped me a lot more, which is, hey, you need to have the final be like this, has to have these points. You can have a midterm or not. I wound up doing a final exam. You could make it like a seminar where there was a paper, or you could have it be an exam, or just like a non-graded course where there's neither. For whatever reason, I liked the idea of a final exam. What I wound up doing was a classic law school thing of like, here's a problem and fact scenario. What would you do about it? How would you respond? What would the email you write back be? But what I was looking for was, yeah, some substantive legal engagement, but a lot of that humanity, like how do you treat the person when you respond to their email? Are you being practical? Are you referencing some of what we talked about? Do you understand what the business's goals are? Are you asking them about that in your response? So it was created as a, yes, to some degree, legal excellence, but also grading your humanity and business capability.
No, it's interesting because I hear you. Like, first of all, I would hate having to grade students' work, especially if I know they're it's just like, I'm not good at grammar. I don't know, just all that stuff. But I would also hate having just a pass fail course because I don't know, you just, there's something to, but maybe I'm wrong because they would show up a little bit more engaged if there's a grade versus pass fail because, oh, this is just an easy way to get a credit for the semester. But maybe that's okay too. So,
I talked to some other professors who gave me some great tips on this, where they were like, hey, you need to make participation a meaningful part of the grade
yeah.
so that people will really want to engage. And we got tremendous engagement. I was like, okay, 35% of your grade is how you show up and participate in class. So that was helpful.
I love that. Have you decided if you're doing it next year again?
I'm not going to do it next year after the move. Like I was able to do it in person out in San
Oh, right. You
Francisco,
can't
which
do
was
it there.
fun. Now that I'm here, I could do it via Zoom, but that's a little less fun. I've been talking to some people who are interested in teaching the same course at the same school, handing it off to them. So that'd be fun. I've been maybe experimenting with doing something out here, Albany Law,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure for right now. Yeah.
Obviously, Lawline is online CLE courses. We've been doing this 25 years now. Teaching is the best form of learning for me, and that's what we say to our faculty. We currently have 1,600 faculty, and the process of, like you were saying, preparing and then being able to communicate effectively is such a reward. What were some of the things that you didn't anticipate or that you did anticipate that change was different, like in the week to week of teaching, how you brought that back to your, whether your personal life or your professional life, that would be, I don't know, inspirational for others to hear or just helpful for them?
Yeah. There's a lot of things. One kind of funny thing I didn't anticipate was some of the students being like, how hard are you going to grade? Getting that type of question. I was like, oh.
Exactly.
And also, they're really interested in finding jobs. I knew that was going to be the case, and I tried to orient the class around that. Let's talk about what a commercial counsel does today. Let's talk about what an employment counsel does in-house today. So giving them exposure, understanding what these lingo is in job postings and stuff, and making that part of it.
It is interesting, but just hearing you say that, it goes back to the reality of law school. It costs a lot of money. You go into a lot of debt, most people, and then you're like, it's so hard to find the right job. And that's the reality. Like, you're there to teach them something that's inspiring and means a lot to you, and they want that. But it's really hard to take that in with the stress of what's happening next and the cost of what they're doing. I don't know. There's something about that just brought the reality of the situation to me.
Totally. And that actually, that's a good point, because that reminds me of, I think, what I would say was my biggest learning from the process was one of the things students were asking, how do you get the job? How do you get that job? What do you do here? How do I get into this career if I'm in this career path? And through talking with him, I realized something that I've done in my career, but I didn't really know it in words, was to just focus on where you're at and be like, what is the job experience you have? What are the leads you have? If you're getting an opportunity at a law firm that's smaller or in a different area or not exciting to you in the way that you thought it was all going to be, maybe you can sit and dive into that and figure out like what is in front of you right now. How can you become interested in it? How can you take something and expand it? You don't have everybody doesn't have to get the job at Google day one out of law school that everybody thinks they want. But hey, maybe you got a job in tax and you didn't think that was what you were interested in, or there's more jobs in tax and you get one, or you get an internship there. Can you really be interested and be a learner and listen and read about this new area? Because over time, if you really love something else, if you love tech or whatever it is, your career will bend you in that direction over time. And you can learn the stuff that's relevant to Google in the tax space. You can work on the Google partnership when you're working in the tax space over time, but it's start with where you're at. Don't try to hope for what everybody else has and try to learn as much as you can about that stuff.
That reminds me of a famous Steve Jobs quote when he was giving a commencement speech. He says, "You can never connect the dots looking forward, only looking backwards." And so to have faith in if you are like for me, I started my career before when I was in law school at a public access TV show and on YouTube called True NYC. And I was interviewing entrepreneurs because I wanted to learn how to start my own business. And this is when I was a second year law student. And I interviewed like Simon Sinek as one example, and a lot of other people who were just getting started. And here I am now, 17 years later, starting another podcast because honestly, some of the best learning I ever got was through these conversations. And to your point, maybe there is something to teaching law students to start their own podcast and use that as a way to learn and grow in their career and things that they can get out of that. Or I don't know if it's necessarily specific to law students, but certainly there's some value to that. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let me ask one last question and then I'll let you get back to your day job. I am a CLE company. And so I was thinking, I'm like, man, who do they use for CLE? And I was like, they probably use PLI, but let's see if I'm right.
You're right.
And how do you take online courses with them? And is there anything you specifically focus on, or do you just do CLE to get your credits?
I try to find stuff that's relevant to my day job. It's hard. There's not a ton of stuff that I find in there that is, there's no product counseling CLE I've seen on there. They might talk about AI, but it's often like all about IP, which isn't as important to us. So yeah, it's a mix. Yeah. When I taught the class, I was able to get 12 credits, which is funny because I did 150 hours of work, but I get exactly one per teaching hour per week or whatever, which is funny. Thanks, California. But yeah.
Secondly, it just occurred to me as you were answering that, I'm like, I don't know, would you be interested in teaching a CLE with Lawline on this topic? Because that would be like you could do that in your sleep after doing a 13 credits.
Yeah.
But it seems like I still think there's a missing component here. And maybe it's not one, maybe there's more than one. I would even be happy to do it with you.
Okay.
I'm serious. Like I love the idea. And there's nothing against, to some degree, sometimes they're more engaging if it's a conversation and we have the things, or you could just do it on your own. But that's something I think might be a nice in between. And then the best part is, let's say you did 4 or 5 or whatever. What we do for many of our faculty and for our clients, we would give access to everyone at Zendesk to take the courses that you taught for free.
That'd be cool.
They can get credit taking your
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah, so you can create. So PLI is obviously they've been around almost 100 years. We're getting there. We're great. One thing we do that I don't think they'll ever get into, we also do hosting and accreditation services for organizations and law firms because we built the platform. Again, I'm a tech guy myself, and I'm like, wow, we built this great tool. We make it easier. And then a lot of our clients it happened during COVID. Nobody was doing in-person, obviously, programs anymore. They're like, can you host this for us? Or yes. And so we built that in 2019, and now we do all these different things. But we did the Simon Sinek, the why and the how and the what. And like our what is we provide exchange of ideas and information. And so we want to build a platform that does that. And so any way we can figure that out, because my goal is I have a stack of books here too. I'm focused on lifelong learning. CLE is a component of that, but it's just a starting point. So anytime I see somebody who I think would be a good teacher on a good subject, I'm like, let me talk to him.
Thank you.
Think about it. We could talk offline, obviously, as well.
Yeah, no, I love that idea. I can say, I think it would be great. The only question is, can I find the time with all the things? But I'd love to
Nobody
keep
ever
talking
can.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And my thought would be, if you had, again, can any of us find the time? Is probably not. But that's why I would say, if we thought this was interesting enough, let's see the materials that you have.
Yeah.
If that can be enough. And if we can do this as a 4-part series where me and you are talking and I'm interviewing you just like this, there's something to that.
That'd be fun.
So that's my pitch at the end of this podcast. I haven't done that before. This is the first time I'm doing that pitch, but why not? Whatever. I think that's a good ending point. It has been an hour. Anything that I didn't cover that you want to make sure that you shared? If not, I think we can bid adieu.
The only thing I'll add is I'm so grateful for the people that helped me in setting all of this up. The network is amazing. If like you're interested in this kind of thing, the legal community is vibrant, and you just need to like quietly step yourself out there, and you can find 1 million people who are, maybe not 1 million, but 10 people who are very passionate about the same thing you are. And I've been really lucky to work with people like Adrian and Olga, but also a bunch of others that I invited to the class. So I want to say thank you to all of them.
It's a great point, because sometimes you feel like you're on an island in an office. You're like, I have no one to talk to. Start a podcast. You'll have a lot of people to talk to.
Yeah.
I feel like a kid in a candy store with all these conversations. I wish I can do 10 a day, but I also have a day job. So with that, let's both get back to our day job. Stay tuned. Stay on for a second after we end. I want to give you logistics. Sure. And those who have gotten this far, appreciate you. So have a good one.
Thanks, David.